This week's already starting off pretty jazzy. Particularly, I'm looking at the Fed. I was always a little bit concerned that the U.S. Federal Reserve was going to take an approach similar to the People's Bank of China as it relates to blockchain. There's no doubt that blockchain was a threat to the U.S. financial system, the global financial system, real talk, right? I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto came out with this perspective that everybody should be their own bank. Well, if everybody's their own bank, then what do we need banks for, right? So that's a tremendous threat to banks. Yo, we've got quite a bit to cover this set, so rock with me. So if you remember correctly, when cryptocurrency, first hit the scene, or when Bitcoin first started gaining like major traction, bank CEOs like Jamie Dimon, they were jumping online, poo-pooing the whole thing. All of the CNBCs of the world, Bloomberg's, all the talking heads were talking down on Bitcoin because they knew it was a threat. I shouldn't say all, but quite a bit of them. And it's only been recently, I think, that after they took a step back, had a chance to study it, to figure out how to neutralize the threat, that they actually started embracing it. And so at the same time, while they were publicly disparaging cryptocurrencies, they were, inside their own labs trying to figure out, like, how do they master this thing and make it work for them, as opposed to having it work against them. So I think that's where we are today, except I think there's been like a light bulb that went off. From a Bitcoin perspective, Bitcoin was a threat when it was thought that it could be a currency, that people would basically, trade in Bitcoin or do commerce with Bitcoin. But then we have stories like, Bitcoin Pizza Day, where somebody, sent, I forgot how many, Bitcoin for a couple of pizzas. And, the Bitcoin that they sent, is worth millions of dollars. So the way you neutralize Bitcoin is to make it volatile, get people to think that it'll be worth more tomorrow than it is today. Why would I give you one Bitcoin for a pizza today when that one Bitcoin could be worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, tomorrow, right? And so in that way, Bitcoin is now a store of value. So it's no more a threat to the banks than is gold, right? So it's not really a currency. It's a speculative asset at this point. So that brings us to today, where I think a light bulb went off, and I think people started to understand the implications of stable coins. And so if you have a stable coin that's pegged to the dollar, it is basically a facsimile for a dollar. And then, people will do commerce with stable coins because they don't have to worry about it being worth $1 million or $100,000, 2 years from now. It'll always be pegged to the dollar. So why not do commerce with that? Now that then brings the threat right back up. And so quite some time ago, the People's Bank of China, they outlawed, the use of Bitcoin in China. They outlawed the use of all crypto. They went hard. They outlawed the use of all cryptocurrency in China with stiff, punishment. If you got caught using it, they still had miners mining it, but you couldn't use it once they realized what the threat was to their own central bank. And they very quickly started working on their own, what they're calling CBDCs, central bank digital currency. China was the first one. They've got a digital yuan now, and I'm going to talk about that in another episode, because right now the United States does not want Olympians in the next Olympics to be using China's digital currency. But that's beside the point. Anyway, let's take a look at this video, and I'll lead into the story about Janet Yellen and what she's doing to stable coins, and specifically to Tether. I need you to do me a favor, fam. please click that subscribe button and the like button. It might be a small thing to you, but to us it's huge. We're trying to hit this 1,000 subscriber milestone one subscriber at a time. So YouTube will recognize us and give us access to the tools that will allow us to bring you more and even better content. Thank you for your support, fam. We really appreciate you. So you can see the headline. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen tells regulators to act quickly, quote unquote, on stablecoin rules. On Monday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen met with the President's Working Group on Financial Markets to discuss the regulation of stablecoins, which are cryptocurrencies that are supposed to be pegged to the reserve assets like gold or fiat currency. This quote, and this is the quote, the Secretary underscored the need to act quickly to ensure there is an appropriate U.S. regulatory framework in place, the Treasury Department said Monday in a statement. The President's Working Group expects to issue recommendations in the coming months. During a meeting, the group discussed the rapid growth of stablecoins, potential uses of stablecoins as a means of payment, and potential risks to end users, the financial system, and national security, according to the statement. Prior, Yellen and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell have repeatedly called for a regulatory framework surrounding stablecoins. So, okay. That's sort of like the tee up. Let's take a look at this video to get a better understanding of what the deal is here.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen getting serious about clamping down on stablecoins, meeting with regulators today, talk about this growing investment trend. Now, CNBC.com's Mackenzie Segalos joins us now for more. Mackenzie, what is the issue with this class of digital asset? I mean, why the clampdown?
Hey, good morning, Martin. So there's been an ongoing controversy about these US dollar pegged stablecoins like Tether and USDT. But the reason that they're in the spotlight now is that the market has gotten so big. These tokens are increasingly being used in domestic and international transactions, which is scary for central banks because they don't have much of a say in how this space is regulated. So this president.
Right. It's scary for central banks. They don't have as much of a say in how this space is regulated. That means these currencies sort of operate outside of U.S. monetary policy. Now, this is getting into macroeconomics a little bit, but as it stands right now, the Federal Reserve, along with other commercial banks in the United States, they work hand in hand to create money and destroy money, and that's how they affect monetary policy. And so I believe the term is M0, where the Fed creates M0 and then banks can create M1 or whatever. But there might be a situation where the purveyors of Tether, et cetera, are actually creating money the same way that banks can create money. But the banks are tightly regulated. And so, if the purveyors of Tether and USD coin and such are operating in a way where they have less reserve, like they don't have like a 1-to-1, right? For every USD coin that they have out in the marketplace, if they don't have like a dollar bill sitting in reserves, then they're in effect creating money. And right now, only banks are allowed to do that. So from that perspective, I can see where the Fed, is really concerned. Anyway, let's continue.
The presidential panel convened today by Janet Yellen is discussing ways to change that. The group of the country's top financial regulators is expected to issue written recommendations in the coming months. This meeting is also likely setting the stage for the Fed's efforts to develop its own virtual currency, which would essentially just be a digital twin of the US dollar, so fully regulated and under a central authority.
Yeah, that's really all I wanted to listen to up at that point. But the idea here is the Fed is looking at making its own central bank digital currency, CBDC. I always, as soon as I say CBD, I'm thinking CBD oil. Like they need to come up with a different acronym. Anyway, the Fed's looking at creating their own CBDC, much like China created theirs. I'm still concerned how much of an iron fist the Federal Reserve is going to use, because that starts to feel like China. Prior to even taking control of the or becoming Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen made some very disparaging remarks about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general. And so she doesn't seem to be crypto friendly. My concern is that U.S. policy, will move in such a direction that it stifles innovation. And we don't need that. I won't go deep into the China thing, but China's, they sort of like stamped out, all things crypto. Now, supposedly they're blockchain friendly. They're just crypto averse. Anyway, I'm going to skip down a little bit because this is the thing that really is I think what's at the core of why they're able to go at the stable coins in this way. Number 6, this is like the 6th big story CNBC was covering this week. Tether executives will reportedly face criminal probe. All right. The U.S. Department of Justice is reportedly examining whether the executives behind Tether, the largest stablecoin in use, committed bank fraud years ago, according to Bloomberg. Quote, Tether routinely has open dialogue with law enforcement agencies, including the DOJ, as part of our commitment to cooperation and transparency, the company said. All right, that's their standard line. Anyway, Tether has been at the center of controversy for years. There have been concerns about whether Tether is being used to manipulate Bitcoin prices. In 2018, one study claimed the token was used to boost Bitcoin during its huge 2017 rally. That's interesting because 2017, that was the year of the ICO. Like billions of dollars were raised in initial coin offerings on the Ethereum platform, and through all that hype, of course, Bitcoin was rallying as well. But they're saying that Tether was used. They're not saying that that Tether, the company, was manipulating Bitcoin prices, but that other people were using Tether to manipulate Bitcoin prices. Some of that, it's when you're operating exchanges, you need volume, you need liquidity. I think some of the things that they're complaining about is what happens on any exchange. Like, they're, at least in the earlier days, they weren't real market makers or specialists in these exchanges. So people are using, using what they can to provide liquidity for their exchanges, so that when customers come, there's somebody on the other side of their bid or somebody on the other side of their ask. Anyway, like, I don't know all the details in terms of like what they're really getting at in terms of criminality, but they really are, going after them. And so the New York Attorney General's office reached a settlement with Tether and Bitfinex, basically for what appears to be an accusation of some sort of fraud or misdeeds. But they accused Bitfinex of moving millions of dollars to cover $850 million in losses. So that's an issue. But here's the key point. In May, Tether broke down the reserves for its stablecoin and revealed that just 2.9% were in cash. That is what's worrying the Fed. Now, they may have had reserves in assets that were non-cash, that they could, convert to cash. But I imagine that there are some strict requirements about how much cash reserves you have to have. Certainly that would be the case for a traditional bank. And so this is probably what the Fed's getting at. So anyway, this just goes to, me and my eyebrows raised anytime the Fed starts coming down hard on certain companies. I'm looking sideways. Quite some time ago, I'm pretty sure it was the Fed, somebody either in Congress or in the in the Fed space or in the Secretary of Commerce's purview, or the SEC, one of those alphabet soup people or groups was saying that they wanted to instantiate rules that required every wallet, every crypto wallet, to be to have to be KYC, all the Know Your Customer, anti-money laundering. regulations, that would completely stifle innovation because, wallets come in many different shapes and sizes. If somebody came out with a crypto version or a blockchain version of Pokemon Go, your Pokemon Go cards have to be stored in a digital wallet, a crypto wallet. Why on earth would we make, somebody's 7-year-old kid go through KYC and anti-money laundering regulations just to be able to get, a wallet to contain their Pokemon NFTs or whatever? It's silly. And so I think this, in some ways, shows the ignorance, that term is too strong, but it shows the lack of understanding of this technology. And they really need to get people in there that know and understand the technology. I'll go ahead and round this out or finish up with, sort of like the hot stories to start off the week. Vitalik Buterin is in the news, as he often is. But he had something interesting to say. And, this is kind of my personal mission. So I'm in alignment with Buterin, in this regard. He says, that, or not that he says, but basically he's encouraging people, Ethereum developers, to work beyond DeFi, which is decentralized finance. Just to bring clarity to it, DeFi applications aim to create or recreate the traditional financial systems such as banks and exchanges with cryptocurrency. And Ethereum is the number one platform for DeFi. But that's just one industry. That's just one segment, in a vast, spectrum of opportunities and new business models, et cetera, that we can build. And, that's kind of my thing. Like I really want, people to embrace blockchain. And cryptocurrency is cool, but that's just like one aspect. That's actually like the first, that's the first application. If you think about like the internet and how the internet started to sort of become more utilized across society, I think like the first sort of like hot app really was email, even more than web browsing, right? People communicating via email, that was the first app everybody used. But like, we don't just use the internet for email now. We use the internet for all kinds of things, including getting packages delivered to our doorsteps, and including ride sharing and hailing taxis and whatnot. We never would have thought about that when the internet first went mainstream. Likewise, as blockchain becomes mainstream and Web3 takes hold, currency, that'll be like a cliche. Like that's just something that we don't even think about. It's like not the most important application of blockchain. And Buterin's just encouraging people to start thinking beyond that so that we can really get this thing to take off. Another headline here. Elon Musk says Tesla will likely start accepting Bitcoin again. All right. Whatever, bro. His whole notion that Tesla was going to stop accepting Bitcoin because it was an energy suck and it didn't, coincide with, sort of like the green ambitions of Tesla didn't make much sense to me. And let me just quote him here. He says, it looks like Bitcoin is shifting a lot more toward renewables, and a bunch of the heavy duty coal plants that were being used have been shut down, especially in China. I want to do a little more due diligence to confirm that the percentage of renewable energy usage is most likely at or above 50%, and that there's a trend toward increasing that number. If so, Tesla will most likely resume accepting Bitcoin. Now, when people talk about how many kilowatt hours of electricity, Bitcoin uses, and then they say, oh, it's a huge energy sink and that sort of thing, I'm wondering what are they comparing it to? How much electricity do all the banks in the world use collectively? How much energy did all of their computers use? How much energy do all the office buildings that holds all their traders and all the trading floors? And there's a vast abundance of electricity used by the financial system overall. And so to point Bitcoin out, to say that Bitcoin is somehow, more of an energy or more of a consumer of energy than these other things, therefore it's not green, therefore Tesla can't accept it. To me, it doesn't make much sense, because if that were the case, then perhaps Tesla can't accept dollars or any other currency, for their product, because that isn't necessarily green. And perhaps, oh, by the way, Tesla employees on their lunch break can't eat beef because all of the methane gas that the cows produce, as they graze and expel, the byproduct of their digestion, right? Like it's at some point it gets really silly. Real talk, if I was a betting man, I'd say a lot of the stuff that Musk is doing, I'm not going to go so far as to say he's manipulating the market, but if you want to increase your position in a particular asset, excuse me, and you can, make statements to sort of reduce the value of that asset and then go on a buying spree, so that because long term that asset is going to rise in value, that would be a smart thing to do if you can get away with it. Anyway, I'm not saying that's what he's doing. I have no idea. I just know he made certain statements around Bitcoin that sort of coincided with China, clamping down on miners or outlawing miners. And a lot of that stuff collectively depressed the price of Bitcoin. And so now, people who were in the Bitcoin, at $45,000, what's a steal at 23, at 30. You know what I mean? So like is what it is. Dorsey's in the news. Yeah. He thinks, Square and Twitter need to be, investing time and mind space, into blockchain, and that's all cool. I think the more interesting thing here is, Amazon, is that they're actually hiring, a digital currency and blockchain expert, right? And that got everybody in a frenzy thinking that, Amazon was going to, they were going to start accepting, crypto, to buy things, on Amazon.com. But let me see if I can find it real quick. As this, article points out, I'm just going to read the headline. Amazon denies the report of accepting Bitcoin as payment. They say that they're going to, be looking into, how this new technology can benefit their customers. But there's no plans at the end of, I think, the rumor was that by the end of 2021 or 2022 or something like that, they're going to start accepting Bitcoin. That's just not true. So anyway, that's sort of, that's what's up in the news, and that's just to start the week. So who knows what's going to happen by the end of the week. Anyway, I will stay abreast of these things and things that are of interest that I think, might interest everybody that I have a perspective on. I will try to bring them to you. Anyway, holla.